Hello, my name is Father Jude Eli, and I represent Western Dominican preaching. This evening we'll be talking about one of the episodes in the life of Moses after the episode of Sinai and the Passover episode. We are going to talk about Moses and the manna, or the bread coming down from heaven, and the murmuring of the people of Israel against God and against his prophet Moses. We have, for example, the reality now that by the good graces of God, God has allowed Moses to be his prophet and his shepherd of Israel, and he shepherds the children of Israel out of Egypt. God is ultimate deliverer, and now they have crossed through the Yam Suf, or the Red Sea. God has been faithful to all of the promises that God gave to Moses. I said that I will bring you out of the land of Egypt, out of the land of bondage, out of the land of slavery. Pharaoh and his forces have been destroyed. The killing of the firstborn of man and beast alike. And now Moses is faced with his own people being formed as the people of God. And we'll read in the book of Exodus and in the book of Numbers, this is no small feat. So they've just passed through the Yam Suf, or the Sea of Reeds, and it's now Exodus chapter 16. And the writer says, they sent forth from Elim, and all the congregation of the people of Israel came out to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after they had departed. Again, the Exodus. Exodus means the departure out of the land of Egypt. And then in verse 2, and the whole congregation of the people of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And they said, what that we had died in the land of the Lord, in the hand of the Lord, in the land of Egypt, where we sat by our flesh pots and ate bread to the full, and it was brought to us for nothing. But you have brought us out, God's assembly, and now we are hungry. The point here is that the children of Israel murmur against Moses and against God. They are saying, wait a minute here. You said, Moses, that God was going to be our God, that he would in fact be the ultimate provider. Well, he's not provided. He's not provided at all. We are hungry now. Better for us to have died old and fat in Egypt with our stomachs filled with bread than to follow Yahweh and you as his good-for-nothing prophet. Didn't we say, leave us alone? But no, we had to follow you. And now, what are we about to do? We are dying. We are going to die of hunger. We should all go back to Egypt, be slaves under the Egyptians once again. At least we'll have bread to eat. Then in verse 4, then the Lord said to Moses, behold, I will rain bread down from heaven, and the people shall go out and gather a day's portion every day, that I might prove to them whether or not they will walk in my law or not. In this injunction, God says to Moses, tell the people this, I will give you bread from heaven. You are only to collect it every day. You are not to collect over one day's ration. Why? It's a sense of obedience. A, will you obey my word first? Second, do you believe that I will in fact supply all that you need, even when you only collect one day's ration? So it's a twofold sense of testing here. Do you believe? Will you fundamentally obey? And do you really believe that I am your provider? Not only am I your deliverer, but I am also your provider. Do you believe that? You are not to collect more than one day's ration. Of course they do, and of course it spoils. They don't listen. And so what happens? He does rain down heaven. He does rain down this manna. Now, the house of Israel called its name manna. It was like coriander seed, white, and the taste of it was like wafers made with honey. And Moses said, this is what the Lord has done. This is what the Lord has in fact commanded. Manna literally means, what is this stuff? That's what it means. They go, Moses, what is this white hoarfrost like of stuff, this substance on the ground? He goes, that's the bread that comes down from heaven. What? That's it. I mean, what is that? That's what it is. What is this stuff? And scientists basically believe that manna is a natural occurring residue from the tamarisk tree. Aphids eat sections of the tamarisk husk. It is digested, it is eliminated from the avis, and it forms this white milky stuff that is edible. And it's edible basically from April to June. So it's a natural occurring substance and a natural occurring phenomena, but what makes it, in a sense, miraculous is that it's out of season. And it appears when God says it's going to appear. Okay? So at this point, they eat this loaf, and they are satisfied until we read in Numbers 11. This manna and the waters that God gave the children of Israel at the stream at Meribah is simply not enough. Don't forget here, what does it take for the children of Israel to believe? They were in Egypt. God sends Moses. Moses says to Pharaoh, let my people go. There are 10 plagues, 10 signs of God's favor for Israel contra Egypt, and they're still complaining. And so, even though God has formally rescued the children of Israel from their Egyptian slave masters, they passed through the Yam Suf, the Reed Sea. It's another sign. So they had the 10 plagues. They walked through the Reed Sea. They wanted bread. Everything that they have asked for, God has in fact given. What have you not received that you have asked for? It's sign after sign after sign, and yet they do not believe. So the question has to be asked. What does it take for you to ever believe that God is in fact faithful to his promises? So at this point, what happens? In Numbers 11, we read, and the people complained in the hearing of the Lord about their misfortunes, and when the Lord heard it, his anger was kindled, and the fire of the Lord burned among them. Now in verse 4, now the rabble that was among them, scholars, rabbis say, not only did you have the children of Israel, there were also non-Israelites in the camp. So the rabble, the non-Jew, the goyim or the Gentile, was also with the Jewish people. And they started complaining to the point that now the Jews are in fact complaining. Now the rabble that was among them had a strong craving. And the people of Israel also wept again and said, oh, that we had meat to eat. That line, oh, that we might have meat to eat, was probably burned into the consciousness of the oral tradition found in the land of Israel. Oh, that we had meat to eat. Bread is not enough. Water's not enough. The 10 signs was not enough. We want meat now. So what happens? Oh, that we had meat to eat. We remember the fish we ate in Egypt for nothing, and the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, the garlic. And now our strength is dried up, and there's nothing left but this manna to eat. And we are tired of this wretched food. They are tired of the very sign that God had, in fact, gave them. So at this point, what happens? Moses has had it up to here. People think, what would it be like to be like Moses, who is able to see God analogously face to face? Huh? Well, Moses is a man among men. He's like any other human being. And he's raised up by God to be the shepherd of Israel. Well, at this point, after the 10 plagues, after leaving Egypt, after the constant, persistent murmuring, Moses goes before the tent of meeting, goes before God, And he sees in verse 10, chapter 11, Moses heard the people weeping throughout their families, every man at the door of his tent, and the anger of the Lord blazed hotly, and Moses was displeased. He goes to the tent, he says, I've had it. The following discourse is fascinating because it shows the real humanity of Moses as God's prophet. Even though you are a prophet of God, you're still very, very human. You're still very, very human. Moses said to the Lord, why have you dealt ill with your servant? Why have I not found favor in your sight that you should treat me this way and that I bear the burden of all this people upon me? Then he says in verse 12, did I conceive these people? By the way, they're your people, not mine. I didn't give birth to them. They're yours. And I'm tired of them. Did I conceive these people? Did I bring them forth? That you should say to me, carry them in your bosom as a nurse carries the child upon her lap? Then he says, and not only this, Lord, where am I going to get meat to give all these people? For they weep before me day after day, saying, give us meat that we might eat. You can see that's a Mosaic little slogan here, you know? And then he says a great line. If you ever have to think that somehow, if you follow God, everything's going to be well, and you're not supposed to have feelings about God, I feel like I'm being deserted here, and that nothing's ever happening right, and no, take some comfort here, folks. He says in verse 14, I'm not able to carry all this people alone. This burden is too heavy for me. Verse 15, if you will dealt with me, kill me at once, if I favor in your sight, then I may no longer see my wretchedness. Translation, do us both a favor, kill me now. I've had it. I've had it with you. I've had it with the signs and wonders. I've had it with these good for nothing worthless people. Do us both a favor. Do me in now. I am sick and tired of it. I am incompetent. I am impotent. I don't speak well. I didn't want to be here in the first place. Kill me. Do us both a favor. The angst of Moses. Here's a guy that sees God face to face, and he goes through the problem. He goes through the pain. God says to Moses, relax. Gather me 70 men of the elders of Israel, whom you know to be elders of Israel, and officers over them, and bring them to the tent of meeting, and let them take their place. And the spirit that I've given you, I'm going to portion out to them so that they can help you lead. They can help you lead, Moses. I know it's difficult. Now, as for this craving of meat, you want meat? I will tell you this. In verse 18 in chapter 11, and say to the people, consecrate yourselves tomorrow. You shall eat meat. For you have wept in the hearing of the Lord, saying, who has given us meat to eat? For it was well for us back in Egypt. Therefore the Lord will give you meat, and you shall eat. You shall not eat 1 day, or 2 days, or 5 days, or 10 days, or 20 days, but the whole month until it comes out of your nostrils, and it becomes utterly loathsome to you. Like a puking child that eats food and then pukes it up through his nose. That's the imagery. You will be given so much meat, you will be vomiting it out of your nostrils. So loathsome. You said that I could not provide. You said that where is meat that we might eat? I will give you so much quail that it will be coming through your nostrils. So loathsome, so plenty will your stomachs be. So what happens? That's exactly what happens. Now Moses, little interesting point here. Moses says, well, wait a minute here. But Moses says, the people whom I am with number about 600,000 on foot. And you have said, I will give them meat that they might eat for a whole month. Shall the flocks of the herds be slaughtered for them to be enough food for them? Or shall all the fish of the sea be gathered together, and will that be sufficient for them? what Moses is saying to the Lord. Lord, there's 600,000 people here. Can you offer enough meat so that people might eat? And there's a great line that the writers of Numbers says, and the Lord said to him, is the Lord's hand too short? Namely, is my hand too short that I cannot reach and give you everything that you need? I'm God. Who do you think you're talking to? I made the universe. What do you mean? You think I can't provide, that my hand is too short? My hand can reach out and give you anything you desire. Don't tell me I can't provide. Who do you think you're talking to? I am what I am. Remember the name of Yahweh. I am what I am. I will be for you whatever tomorrow demands. You want water? You got water. You want bread? You got bread. You want meat? You got meat. There's nothing too short or too great that I cannot do. And of course, that's what happens. He in fact gives. Now at this point, we have the children of Israel taking up their tent pegs, taking up their tents, and they wander. They start to go. And now in chapter 21 of the book of Numbers, we read, from Mount Hor they sent out by the way to the Reed Sea to go around to the land of Edom. And the people became impatient on the way. And the people spoke against God and spoke against Moses. Again, you're going to hear this constant taunt of the Jewish people against God and against Moses. Why have you brought us out from the land of Egypt to die in this wilderness, where there is no food and no water, and we loathe this worthless food? Again, what have they not received? And what happens? They are murmuring